The June jobs report showing 4.8 million Americans are working again. That is a lot more than we were hoping for. The unemployment rate also dropped to 11.1%. It is crazy to say dropping to just over 11%, but that is the lowest unemployment rate we have seen during this crisis. In spite of that, though, 1.4 million Americans still filed for first-time unemployment claims last week. We have not been able to break below that million mark. NBC News senior business correspondent Stephanie Rule explains what the June jobs numbers say about our economy.
Hey there. It is a very big day for jobs in America, and good news. The unemployment rate ticked down to 11.2%, and we added just under 5 million jobs during the month of June. So, yes, this is a big positive, because remember how many people have been placed on unemployment over the last 14 weeks. But by no means are we out of the woods. If you look at March and April, 22 million Americans lost their jobs. And in May and June, we saw over 7 million go back to the workforce. Now, this is a positive, certainly a positive for all of those people back to work. But you have to consider taking that picture is really just a snapshot in time. In the month of June is when we saw so much government support. The stimulus checks went through. Millions of Americans got that expanded unemployment, which means consumers would be spending. That's good for business. We also saw over $600 billion in PPP, that's the small business loan program, go through. And remember that the way that program works, you've got to have your employees to make the loan a grant. So we saw lots of businesses rehire employees, plus factor in it's June. So seasonal workers get offers again. So this is a positive across the board. But if you think that we're out of the woods, if you think we're getting into a V-shaped recovery, we're not. What we are in terms of an economic crisis is directly tied to the health crisis. And in the last week, as we have seen corona spread across the South and the West, even Dr. Fauci saying in some places this thing is out of control, we're seeing businesses close again, some temporarily, some for good. Even big businesses like Apple closing some of their stores. In states like California, 19 counties now going into some sort of shutdown with bars and restaurants. In New York, they just decided New York City will be delaying allowing people inside of restaurants. So while we are in positive momentum in terms of recovery, it is a rocky road and we're not snapping back into things. But I would say that given these numbers, the momentum is positive, and that is good for America.
President Trump thrilled with the jobs numbers today and predicting more gains ahead.
Today's announcement proves that our economy is roaring back. It's coming back extremely strong. We have some areas where we're putting out the flames or the fires, and that's working out well. We're working very closely with governors, and I think it's working out very well. I think you'll see that shortly.
NBCNews.com senior White House reporter Shannon Pettypiece joining me now. And Shannon, what else did the president have to say about this report?
Well, the big focus was on the economy. He was not scheduled to hold any sort of news conference today. Once those economic numbers came out, the White House quickly announced with about 30 minutes notice that he would be having a news conference and spent the vast majority of that time talking about the economy. Here's what he said about what's ahead. Take a listen.
Said you're going to have a fantastic third quarter. It'll be a third quarter the likes of which nobody has ever seen before, in my opinion. And the good thing is the numbers will be coming out just prior to the election, so people will be able to see those numbers. The fourth quarter, likewise, will be extremely good. And maybe most importantly, from the standpoint of our country itself, next year will be a historic year. Next year is going to be an incredible year for jobs, for companies, for growth.
Yeah, and he, as you can hear, Allison, openly acknowledges the election there and that the third quarter numbers will be right before the election, because there is this theme, this narrative the president is trying to sell of a great American comeback story of leading the country through a crisis and getting it into some sort of solid economic shape, where even if we aren't in the third quarter where we were back in 2019, or the message that he's trying to sell will be that we're heading in the right direction. And he made that very clear from his comments today.
All right, Shannon, let's talk coronavirus. The U.S. just hit a new record, 50,000 new coronavirus cases in a single day. The president said this.
I think we're going to be very good with the coronavirus. I think that at some point that's going to sort of just disappear, I hope.
Yeah, will disappear at some point, right? We'll see.
Yeah, at some point, potentially very far from now. We just don't know. Did he address the coronavirus surge that's happening right now in parts of this country?
Really very briefly. And you played that clip just a moment ago where he described this as flames and fires that we were putting out and that everything was going very well. Of course, that is going to contradict what a lot of Americans are seeing. 5 of the 10 largest states are seeing record numbers of coronavirus cases. 1 in 3 Americans live in those states. The president, though, describing those as some flames that we will put out. And Kayleigh McEnany, the press secretary, yesterday describing these as embers. So still keeping the focus on the economy, trying to spin things in the positive direction, and not really echoing the language that we're hearing from governors and healthcare workers who are in these most affected states.
Shannon, President Trump doesn't wear a mask, but now he's saying that he isn't against them. Here's what he told Fox Business.
I'm all for masks. I think masks are good. I would wear, if I were in a group of people and I was close.
You would wear one?
Oh, I would. Oh, I have. I mean, people have seen me wearing one. If I were in a tight situation with people, I would absolutely.
You think the public will see that at some point?
I mean, I'd have no problem. Actually, I had a mask on. I sort of liked the way I looked. Okay, I thought it was okay.
Shannon, a new study from Goldman Sachs is saying that if the administration made masks mandatory, it could save the economy from taking a 5% hit on GDP. Is there any chance that we'll see a mask mandate from this administration? I mean, could the president be swayed by numbers like that?
Well, legally, it could be very difficult for the federal government to require everyone in the U.S. to wear a mask. You get into issues of states and municipalities and who can make that requirement. But we are starting to hear more from not just the president, but the vice president, from the Treasury Secretary, Steve Mnuchin, talk of encouraging people to wear masks when it's recommended. And while that might not seem like a lot for these officials just to be telling people to wear a mask if their state recommends it, that is a big leap from where we were a week ago or even 2 weeks ago when they had a rally in Tulsa and people weren't required to wear masks. And the press secretary repeatedly saying that masks are a personal choice, recommended but not required by the CDC. We're starting to see a bit of a change of tone in the language coming from the White House.
All right, Shannon Pettypiece with the latest out of the White House. Thank you so much. Joe Biden going after President Trump today for his reaction to the jobs numbers and his handling of the pandemic.
There's no victory to be celebrated. We should hope, but there's no victory to be celebrated. We're still down nearly 15 million jobs, and the pandemic is getting worse, not better. It doesn't have to.
NBC News correspondent Mike Memley covers the Biden campaign. He joins me now. And Mike, what did Biden say about today's numbers?
Yeah, Allison, I mean, this speaks really to what appears to be a difficult situation if you're Joe Biden, because typically, and on the surface, looking at these jobs numbers, it's a positive for the president. You heard, that's why you saw the president rush to the briefing room as soon as he was allowed to, an hour after the jobs numbers came out, to try to tout them. And so while the president wanted to be an optimist about these numbers, Biden used these remarks a couple hours after the president to try to offer a reality check. As you heard, he said, we're still down 15 million jobs from where we were before the start of the pandemic. He said the president is spiking the football and he's not even on the 50-yard line, and that he has to quit hoping for the best and quit claiming victory. I will say, though, Allison, in talking to Democrats, you know, the president continues to lead on really just one issue, and that is the economy. And we've been hearing from the Biden campaign that he is going to give a bigger economic address, talk about his jobs plan for the country. But we still haven't seen that yet. And I think there are outside Democrats who are supporting the vice president who do want to see him be a little bit more aggressive and trying to take this narrative away from the president, because it's tough to be the pessimist when the president can go out there and offer some optimism to the country.
Mike, how about the coronavirus? President Trump saying the spike in cases across the country is, quote, being handled. What did Joe Biden say about that?
Well, this is the other point of what the former vice president wanted to do today, right? The 1992 election, James Carville famously said, it's about the economy, stupid. Well, for Joe Biden, it's about the pandemic, stupid. He said, that, you can't really claim any positive news here about the economy when you haven't dealt with the coronavirus. You haven't, and that the coronavirus is still going to make things worse in the country. Also pointing out that a lot of these jobs that have been gained in the past month are sort of the easiest jobs to fill. Now, I noticed at the top of the show, you played Vice President Pence talking about masks, the president there also talking about how maybe he is warming to masks. Let's take a listen to Joe Biden, who also raised that topic as well.
President Trump has turned wearing a mask into a political statement. And yesterday, he was once more claiming the coronavirus would, quote, just disappear, I hope, quote, just disappear, I hope. That's what he said. It's like deja vu all over again. We're months into this crisis, and that's still his best answer?
Now, typically, Allison, a president who is leading on the economy over his challenger is going to win. Re-election history shows us that. But what the Biden campaign is pretty confident in is the fact that the pandemic and really just the larger issues of the president over the last 4 years, Americans getting fed up with what they've seen in the White House, that is going to be the dominant issue. And they're still confident in that overall.
Mike, a new Monmouth poll shows Biden with a 12-point lead over President Trump. Several recent polls have put Biden ahead of Trump. How's the campaign handling this? I know a short time ago they were trying not to get too excited about a lead so early on.
Yeah, the watchword from the Biden campaign is constantly to remind us of how much time is left between now and the election, how much can change. They don't want people putting too much stock into these polls. But one interesting number that I think the Biden campaign was looking closely at, Monmouth, of course, first of all, the trend line is very good. Every month since about February, Biden's standing in this national poll has gone up. But they asked the question about whether voters were confident that both candidates, President Trump and the former vice president, had the stamina in order to serve 4 years as president. And then we know the Trump campaign has really been trying to raise this issue about Biden. Well, the Monmouth poll found that, in fact, 52% of voters were either somewhat or very confident that Biden had the stamina to serve as president. Only 45% felt the same way about Trump. So that's something the Biden campaign calling attention to. The other thing that is really the focus of the Biden campaign today has to do with fundraising numbers. We just got new numbers from the Biden campaign last night. He raised $141 million in June. It's hard when he was raising single-digit millions in January. We talk about how Biden was never a really good fundraiser, but he raised more than the incumbent president, beating him by $10 million. And over the last 3 months, Allison, obviously you see there on the screen, $282 million compared to $266 million for the Trump campaign. That's a lot of money, and that's a big advantage over a sitting president.
Oh, sure is. Mike, I saw those numbers coming in last night. Trump's first, and I said, whoa. And then Biden's, I said, whoa. I mean, those are some pretty impressive hauls considering what we have going on in our country right now.
That's exactly right, Allison. And the Biden campaign happy to step on the Trump campaign's early celebrations of what a big number they had. The campaign manager for the Trump campaign saying Americans are voting with their wallets. Well, the Biden campaign was happy to put their number out as quickly as they could after to say, well, in fact, if that's true, they're voting for us.
Oh, I bet they were. Mike Memoli, great to see you. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Allison.
Hey, NBC News fans, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down here and click on any of the videos over here to watch the latest interviews, show highlights, and digital exclusives. Thanks for watching.